Isn't he beautiful?
Wow.
This is a 16-year-old, fully adult golden eagle. Okay. Now, this particular eagle, it's a rescue. A farmer up in Wyoming was threatening to shoot him. And I was called in by the federal government to go to Wyoming and rescue him before he got shot. And so let's start from the bottom and work our way up. Shall we, big guy? I know, you gotta look around for a minute. Get comfy. Let's show him your feet. Look at these things.
Oh, wow.
Settle in. Yeah, settle down. Let's show him those 3 feet. 600 pounds per square inch of crushing power in those feet. He can drive those talons through my glove and crush the bones in my hand. It's really good. He likes me. We do appreciate that. My eagle has over 7,000 feathers. 7,000. Now, there are many native people around the world that believe that if you say your prayers with the eagle feather will carry your prayers to God. Well, I've got over 7,000 of them. I really appreciate it. All 7,000 feathers only weigh about 2 pounds in weight, so they're very light. The bones of birds, the bones are hollow, so the entire skeletal structure, again, about 2 pounds in weight. Yet there's a portion of my eagle's body that represents half his body weight, and that's the large chest muscles. Get settled. The pectoral muscles right here, and these are the motors that he uses to drive that beautiful 6-foot wingspan that allows eagles to fly where hawks and falcons cannot. For eagles have been spotted at altitudes greater than 30,000 feet. And this eagle can comfortably soar in a 40-mile-an-hour wind, which would ground a hawk or a falcon. And of course, the eyesight of an eagle is legendary. Let me tell you truly how well this eagle can see. This eagle weighs 8 pounds. This 8-pound animal has eyes larger than yours. Not only is his eyes larger, my eagle can see approximately 8 times further than you can. But you and I, we get a pair of binoculars and we can see 8 times further. Well, not only does he see 8 times further, he has 6 times the number of light-sensitive cells, the rods and cones in the back of the eye, than we have. So everything an eagle sees is 6 times clearer. This eagle can spot a jackrabbit 5 miles away. And he does. You see, I am the first person in North America licensed to trap and train a wild eagle in falconry. So this eagle and I would go out on the desert. All of this comes off. He flies free. He goes thousands of feet in the sky. He flies with the wild eagles. And I look up in the sky and I see 2 or 3 eagles soaring the ledges north of town. And I say, well, I think that's my eagle. But it's a little hard to tell because they're so far away. And you always have to wonder what they're talking about. To see my eagle cruising with his friends, I can see my eagle looking at his buddies and saying, watch this. I have a trained human. All I have to do is drift out over that guy's head, and he'll run out through the desert with a stick, hitting bushes, flushing out rabbits for me to catch. I will. Now, if there are no rabbits to be found, it's time to go home. I can blow my whistle, he'll fly back, land on my glove for food. Or I have his toy. It's a leather sack. It's called a lure. I tie food on his lure. I blow my whistle, throw his toy out on the ground, and my eagle will go into a wonderful dive, headlong, vertical, about 145 miles an hour, and he will kill the leather sack, which is convenient. One day my eagle got just a little confused. Thousands of feet in the sky, no rabbits to be found. It was time to go home. So I blew my whistle, threw his toy out on the ground, and my eagle went into a wonderful dive. Headlong, vertical, 145 miles an hour. It was impressive. But it became apparent very quickly. He wasn't coming down to kill his toy. He was coming to my arm. When I woke up, I was 6 feet back, laying face down in the dirt, with my eagle standing next to me, looking down at me to say, why are you laying there? I had a long talk with my eagle that day, how I could not withstand the impact of an 8-pound bird at 145 miles an hour, and I would appreciate if you'd never do that again. He dislocated my shoulder and damaged my back and knees. But that experience has given me knowledge. I have a knowledge that none of you have. I have an absolute knowledge of exactly what is going through the mind of a jackrabbit just before I don't recommend it. Well, as I said earlier, our local electric company donated about $1 million for property in the mouth of Cedar Canyon to build a permanent wildlife rescue facility and a nature park. That's our big project. And when the property was donated to us, I thought it would be very appropriate to have a property dedication ceremony and to invite the Paiutes, because the Paiutes are the native people that live here, and have their spiritual leader, the spiritual leader's name was Mr. Clifford Jake, do a blessing for us. Well, this is going to be a little complicated. You see, the Paiutes believe that their language is sacred. They do not like to speak their language in front of non-Paiute. And they also believe that their language is sacred, and they do not like to perform religious ceremonies in front of non-Paiute. So I had to make a presentation before the Paiute Council. So I went and made my little presentation before the Paiute Council. They got back about a month earlier, and they said, Mr. Tyner, because of what you do with the rescue of wildlife, especially eagles, and that the properties for the education of children, we will give our spiritual leaders permission to do a blessing. November 11th. Foot of snow on the ground. Miserably cold. In fact, I didn't think anybody would even show up. Much to my surprise, about 100 people in the community came up to the nature park. Mr. Jake was brought by his grandson, because Mr. Jake was in his 80s. And so he cleaned off the snow in an area for Mr. Jake so he could put down his blanket, his eagle feather smudge pot, juniper branch, the paraphernalia he used for his prayers. And he asked us all to stand in a big prayer circle, for which we did. And then Mr. Jake started the prayers to bless the ground. Now, the prayers would be done in whisper because their language and religion is sacred. I certainly understand that. When he finished his prayers, Mr. Jake called me into the prayer circle and asked if I had my eagle with me. And I says, oh yeah, I've got my eagle. And he asked if I could bring the eagle into the prayer circle. So I brought my eagle, put him on a perch in the middle of the prayer circle. And Mr. Jake started the prayers a second time, blessing the ground and blessing my eagle as well. Now this is the first time in his 80-plus years Mr. Jake was able to know a blessing with a live eagle. And that meant a great deal to Mr. Jake. When he finished the blessing the second time, he called me back into the prayer circle and asked me if I would please stand in his place and face east. I'm a little bit nervous, and I'm standing there facing east. Mr. Jake standing off to my left side a little bit. And he started the prayers a third time, blessing the ground, blessing my eagle, and blessing me as well, saying all of the words to the prayers so that I could hear them. And I felt very honored that he would share his language with me, because I was told that wasn't a possibility. And then when he finished the prayers the third time, he reached up for his hand on my shoulder and spent the next few minutes explaining to me what each of the prayers meant. And I felt very honored that he would share that with me. Once the property dedication ceremony was over, Mr. Jake asked if I could please come to his home. He wanted to visit. So later on that afternoon, I went up to Mr. Jake's house, and he sat in his living room, and he told me the story of the eagle. And the story was that the eagle was once human, and that the most noble and courageous of the native people are called by the Great Spirit to come and sit in council in heaven. And this noble individual said, well, I cannot sit in council because I cannot fly. So the Great Spirit turned him into an eagle. And the eagle has a very special responsibility, a very special calling. And the calling that the eagle has is to remain on earth by night, collecting the prayers from the people of the nation into 7,000 feathers, 7,000 prayers. And then by day, ride the currents of warm rising air up into the heavens and deliver all the prayers to the Great Spirit. And then to receive all of the blessings from the Great Spirit and to bring all the blessings back down to the people of the nation. And Mr. Jake went on to say that when a Paiute person sees an eagle soaring overhead, they see that eagle as one of the great eagles, and the eagle is watching over them personally, kind of like a guardian angel. And I thought, what a beautiful explanation as to why eagles are sacred. And then Mr. Jake went on to say that it is tradition within the Paiute community that when you receive your first blessing, that you receive a Paiute name. Now please understand, folks, I'm not the Dancing with Wolves type. You know, I love the Paiute people. They're the sweetest people on the planet. Their belief system and my belief system is a little bit different. The name that Mr. Jake gave me, and please understand, my English tongue does not twist that well. The Paiute language is beautiful, but very complex. But the English translation for the name that Mr. Jake gave me is the Healer of Eagles, or the Healer of Angels. But Mr. Drew a blank. Mr. Jake, yes, Mr. Jake. I'm getting old. Mr. Jake, he passed away a few years ago. And at his funeral, they talked about Mr. Jake coming back one day as one of the great eagles to watch over the Pike people. And after his funeral was over, I had this very, very sweet elderly Pike woman come up to me, look me in the eyes, and said, Mr. Tyner, if you ever have the opportunity to care for Mr. Jake, would you please let us know? So I guess that's my job for the rest of my life. It is to care for the sick, injured, orphaned wildlife here in Utah. And if one of the eagles that comes into the rescue center happens to be Mr. Jake, I need to let the elders of the Pike tribe know that Mr. Jake is with me. Now please don't ask me how I'll know it's Mr. Jake, because I have no idea. But I'm sure if Mr. Jake comes to the rescue center, I will know. Eagle questions before we close this down. Yes, sir.
With the other two birds, can they fly?
Well, yes. The falcon I cannot allow to fly because they can't see well enough to run. But yes, the hawk hunts just like the eagle. Absolutely. She flies completely free. Any last eagle questions before? This eagle and I, we've been together, 14 years now? And so he's a dear friend. Now you have to understand, guys, he flies free. He flies from September through February. The courtship season is January. And if he finds a pretty little lady eagle that's cuter than I am, he will fly away and never come back. I do not own him. He has the right to leave. Does that make sense? But we've been together 14 years, which is just kind of absolute proof that I'm adorable.
And how did he come to be in your center?
Well, a farmer up in Wyoming was threatening to shoot him, and I was called in by the federal government to go rescue him before he got shot.
Right.
Now, the
Is
agreement
he
is,
animals or?
no, old wives' tales die hard. There are still farmers that believe that eagles swoop down and carry off sheep, cows, and children.
Right.
And sometimes it's better not to argue the point. This eagle can carry approximately 2 pounds of weight into flight. Average weight of a newborn lamb is 11 pounds. And for all the mothers out there, if there's a mother who's out on the desert that weighs less than 2.5, whose baby weighs less than 2.5 pounds, she should be arrested. So, could an eagle kill a newborn lamb? It could. Will it? No. Unless there's really weird circumstances. And so they fly down, they're a scavenger, they're eating the easiest meal, the farmer drives up, accuses the eagle of doing the killing, and wants to shoot the eagle. That's the issue.
Martin, can you tell the story that you had told one time at the Cosmopolitan when you were there about the bird that had been struck by a vehicle and was laying in the road for like a couple of weeks, and finally a trucker stopped?
What that was, I have a slideshow presentation. I have that in my slideshow, but I'll tell you the story. Like I said, I get called out. I'm on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to volunteer to care for sick, injured, and orphaned wildlife. And there was a bald eagle. There was a bald eagle that had been hit by a car out the other side of Salina, out on I-70. And a gentleman that commutes on that part of the freeway every day to and from work saw the eagle off the side of the road, didn't think very much of it. Because we see dead deer and dead foxes and coyotes and owls and hawks and eagles and stuff on the highways all the time. And so in his normal day-to-day transport, says the eagles are here in the wintertime, it's January, and saw the eagle laid off the side of the road, thought it was dead, didn't think very much of it. And after 2 weeks, he looked over, as he was on his day's commute, looks over at the dead eagle, and the eagle moved. He'd been on the ground for 2 weeks. In that 2-week period of time, they had 2 snowstorms. Yes, they had 2 snowstorms. The eagle was buried at least twice by the snowplows. And so that's why I was called in. So I drove up and picked up the eagle the other side of Salina. And when I picked up the eagle was dead. His heart just hadn't stopped beating. And so I raced back to Cedar City to our rescue center and start immediately. I'm not going to worry about injuries at the moment. Right now, you have to worry about hypothermia and dehydration, starvation, that kind of stuff. We've got to save its life. So we basically, we start fluids and foods and get my wife's hair dryer out. We start blow drying the eagle to start trying to get it warmed up. And the eagle had given up. It didn't want to live. It just laid there virtually with death in its eyes. I could not allow the eagle to sleep. If it falls asleep, that's it, it's gone. So I had to hold the eagle, and I basically held the eagle with the feeding tube down its throat, giving fluids and foods and medications and those kinds of things. And I sat up with the eagle, keep it moving, keeping it just willing it to stay alive. And after 3 weeks of intensive care, the eagle had recovered well enough that we could put it out in a flight chamber where it could actually walk around. And we had the eagle for more than 4 months before we could get it back in the wild. Now, at the time when the eagle was ready to return back to the wild, that particular eagle, like I said, 7,000 feathers, 7,000 prayers. So when I have an eagle ready for release, I frequently will seek out individuals or organizations that could use some extra prayers. And at that particular time, I couldn't think of anyone that could use more prayers than our men and women serving in the military. Our local National Guard unit was preparing for their last deployment to Iraq. And so I went and talked to their commander and says, I've got this beautiful eagle that's ready to be returned back to the wild. Would you guys like to release it before you leave? And they said, absolutely. So we invited all veterans, all active military, friends and families. And we had hundreds of people show up at the Parowan Gap. And we released the eagle back into the sky with the prayers and wishes of everyone there that our men and women serving in the military would come home safe. So again, that's just kind of part of what I do.
What was his injuries?
The injuries, the most severe injury was a concussion and then a lot of soft tissue damage in its pectoral muscles, and it did have a small fracture in one wing, and so it took us about 4 months to get it healed.
How did you get the wild eagle to become so calm around you now and become like a pet?
Well, they're never a pet. He's my hunting companion. I am very, very lucky and cursed. In fact, I talk a little bit about this in my book. I'm severely dyslexic. And keep on plastic, thank you, that was very polite. I'm severely dyslexic. And when I was in school, back in the 50s and 60s, they didn't know what being dyslexic was. And I remember sitting at a parent-teacher conference and the teacher telling my mother, we've done all we can. Martin will never learn to read. But as long as he works for ditch diggers, he'll be fine. And of course, as a kid, I'm sitting right there. And so basically, everybody had completely given up on me but my grandmother. And my grandmother was a retired school teacher, and I don't want to ruin the story, so I won't go any more than that. But what I have discovered is people who are dyslexic, and I was actually part of a research project on people who are dyslexic, and what they've discovered is people who are dyslexic, on average, have a slightly higher IQ than normal. Their brain just processes information differently. And people who are dyslexic have a tendency to have a much higher, what they call a situational awareness, than normal. And so basically, what I've discovered is all of the best animal trainers I've ever met are dyslexic. And it helps them to be able to interact with animals because of the much higher sensitivity that they have to the animal's movements and that higher situational awareness. And so I was very, very lucky to have that. I can take a full-grown wild eagle like this one right out of the sky and have him sitting right on my glove like this. Takes about 5 minutes. And I can have a wild eagle flying free and hunting in about a month. But I've been doing it for 50 years, and because of my temperament and my being dyslexic, it allows me to do things that a lot of people just can't do. That's just kind of fortunate. And in fact, the very first story in my book, I won't, like I said, I don't want to give away all of it. When I was a very young child, I was terrified of birds. I would see a sparrow fly overhead and I'd scream, run for the house. And with the help of very wise grandparents and other mentors, not only got me past my fear, but like I said, I became the first person in North America licensed to trap and train a wild eagle with falconer. So it's been an amazing life, and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful that I found a beautiful young lady to share that life with me, and she's back there. That's my beautiful wife Susan back by the door. It puts up with all my silliness. And yes.
How did you become a falconer? Did you apprentice with another falconer?
Yeah, let me make this as fast as I can because we're running out of time. Okay, in order to be a falconer, we're going to try to go fast, okay? In order to be a falconer, you read every book on falconry you can find. There's a written test that you must pass. The test is issued by the state fish and game. Like most government tests, the test is extensive and badly written. Once you pass the written test, you have all your facilities inspected, then you must apprentice for 2 years under a general class or master class falconer. Then after your 2 years of apprenticeship, there's a variety of hawks and falcons you can't have an eagle. 5 more years before you can apply for a master's license. Once you've acquired a master's license, you have a variety of hawks and falcons you have flown. But just because you've flown, 20, 30 ounce hawks and falcons does not qualify you to fly an 8-pound golden eagle. By federal law, you must have at least 2 years experience flying eagles before they'll give you a permit to fly eagles, so you can't fly an eagle without a permit. The way around that is to work as a wildlife rehabilitator who specializes in the rehabilitation and release of injured eagles. So you can get your 2 years experience working with eagles, so you can get your permit to work with eagles. Once you finish that apprenticeship, now you have to apprentice a 3rd time under an established eagle falconer. And after that years of apprenticeship, then you are now qualified. Now you are qualified to fly an eagle, and that's the halfway point. Are you sorry you asked?
Can you get any disease from them?
Can you get any? Really, no. No. My previous eagle was named Bud, and he and I were together for 16 years. He was bitten by a mosquito and died of West Nile. And then I contracted the West Nile from treating him because I was just covered in mutes and saliva and treated him, and I ended up with West Nile. And but to get West Nile from mosquitoes, so yeah, no, but basically not. Well, you guys have been absolutely wonderful. Let me get him put away, and we'll finish up here.
We have never given out this award before, so this is pretty special, not only for us, but I'm sure for you. And it's, I'm just going to read it.
Please.
Okay, so the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, the Conservation Committee, dedicated to the preservation of the natural resources of our country, its soils, minerals, forests, waters, and wildlife, present this certificate to Martin James Tyner in recognition of outstanding achievement for environmental awareness. Now, it doesn't say about birds, but we'll add birds, large birds of prey. And this has been signed by our President General, Denise Doring Van Buren, and our National Chair of Conservation, Zia Lowe. So if you would like to present.
Thank you.
We also have a medal that comes with us.
A medal?
Yes, yes. And so we would like to pin this medal onto you. Of course, I guess I didn't know it was going to be attached to the, here, May, will you, please? Okay. And we also will do something special for the love of your life, who has been your partner for 40 lifetimes?
40 years.
I don't know exactly how many. Where would you like me to pin this?
Let's be safe and put it on the pocket flap.
It's a little thick there. So we'll try this. All right, we got it through. Awesome. All right, so this is a very beautiful, it's an NSDAR Conservation Award. So.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so you're obviously soaring with the eagles with your husband.
In case you're curious, that's one of the shirts that we sell, and this is Sketch.
And so we wanted to present you with our patriotic soaring eagle in your service to others in bringing the wildlife up close and personal, especially to young children, and so that they're not afraid of birds and what they offer to us. And there we go. There we go. So there you go. Very nice. Very didn't ruin the stories. He kind of whetted your appetite a little bit about what the stories are, but it's a fantastic book, and I believe Susan helped in the writing of that book. But told some of his stories, and especially the impact of your grandparents on your life, and how he got started with his birds, and how he became the amazing person that he is today, and making sure that the wildlife is respected and cared for.
It's a great story to sit down and read with your grandchildren.
And she felt like we needed some chocolates.
I'll see if I can share
All right. Anyway, we can't thank you enough for coming today.
Thank you very much.
And
This is
being
quite
a
an
part
honor.
of, and the books are on the back table, and if you felt led to help them with their, remember what he said, it's donations to keep his foundation going. So if you feel led to help him in that, or them in that regard, please do. Okay, thank you.